Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Have We Made It Yet podcast. It's the podcast where we talk about the process of making it, and we ask ourselves if we've made it yet. It's kind of slightly torturous because the answer is usually. Anyways, I'm comedian Josh Yang.
And I'm the actor, Lucas Ng.
The actor, Lucas Ng, and we are your co-hosts. And at the top of our podcast, we like to ask each other this torturous question. Hey, Lucas, have you made it yet?
I would give it a 100% no.
100,
But things are picking up in the industry. If you're an actor, auditions are happening, and they're all over Zoom. So actually, since we're actually doing this podcast over Zoom, it's great practice because you actually get to see how you're looking at when you're like miming things for a Tim Hortons commercial. You know, eat a sandwich, drink an ice cap, eat a Timbit. It's all that.
It's all that.
Things are picking up again, so fingers crossed that more auditions will come and that we will try to get back to normal. But even being on set is going to be weird. So that's another episode's question right there.
Yeah.
Mr. Josh Yang.
Yes.
Have you made it yet?
Well, you know, I haven't made it yet, but I feel like I've been, gypped. I've been, missold on this idea of the dream because I should have made it. I should have made it by now. And I say now because the day that this podcast release is July 14th. And it will officially be, I count it as officially. It'll officially be the 1 year anniversary since I did my first on-stage set through the LOL comedy class that's held up at Absolute Comedy. So I was able to perform up at Absolute Comedy. Mm-hmm. It was a great environment because it was pretty much everybody's classmates, friends and family was in for this. So it was like a warm crowd. Everybody got it. So it was a nice little home game advantage type of thing to start it off. And it was a great show. And so it's been 1 year since then. And I would have expected to be, doing theaters already because that's what everybody expects, right? After 1 year.
Netflix special, man. Seriously, come on.
Yesterday. It should have been yesterday. Why was I never? But anyways, okay, no. But yeah, no, it's only been a year. But even then, it's like, I started off trying to keep my expectations low, but still the year has been actually exceeded my expectations in what I was able to do and perform. And it was, I'm not gonna lie, a lot of it was thanks to our guest for this episode. You remember Joe Vu from last episode as being one of this dynamic duo of teachers for the LOL comedy class. Today's guest on the 1 year anniversary is the other teacher. He is a veteran of the Toronto comedy scene. He's also a writer and actor as well. And not only does he teach the LOL comedy class, but he's been doing comedy clubs across the country. He's been featured on Just for Laughs, JFL 42, Kevin Hart's LOL network. He's written for This Hour as 22 Minutes, CBC Radio's Laugh Out Loud, and SiriusXM. And in 2016, he won the Toronto Comedy Brawl, which I was looking forward to do this summer as like my first shot at it, but he won it in 2016. So it is the very funny and the teacher who started it all for me, Mr. Foad HP.
Wow, thank you. That was such a nice intro.
I definitely did not just read it all off of your website because
That's good. I'm glad someone goes to that website. I don't think anyone does.
It's a solid website. It's got a nice big face of yours right there, so it's like you get it right away. Yes, thank you, Fawad, for joining us on the Have We Made It Yet podcast.
Thank you, Josh and Lucas. Excited to be here.
And off the top, we do always ask our guests very open, and we let our guests decide how they want to answer this, but it's, have you made it yet, Fawad?
I would say by most people's definition, definitely not. But I am a full-time artist in Canada, so I haven't had a day job it'll be 3 years this year. So in that regard, I'm going to say yes.
Wow.
Yeah. Man, isn't that also, being a full-time like artist in Canada, like in the States, like there's a lot more options and like ways you can do it. But in Canada, geez, it is hard to
It's
be an
very
artist.
limited for sure. Yeah, for sure. And like it's so silly because we in Canada we love to pretend that it's like, oh, it's our population that's keeping us from having these opportunities.
Right.
But like the UK and Australia, they don't have like massive populations like the US does, and they have their own industries, and that's because they have a lot of like similar to I guess CanCon, I don't know what they're called, but like they have these mandates for their own content on top of stuff they can license externally, whereas our like media has basically stripped those CanCon restrictions, so now they can just license stuff from abroad.
Right.
Which is bullshit. So in spite of that, I'm still making money. It can go to hell.
Fucking right.
That's pretty much making it in Canada. There you go. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely a long process to get there, right? Especially for new comedians. Like you shouldn't have an expectation of being anywhere making money. Like even for you just said like you've only just been able to not have to have a day job for the last 3 years. With all that in mind though, like in the beginning when you first started, like what really kind of pushed you to take that step and be like, you know what, I'm gonna rough it out, I'm gonna grind it out, this is what I want to do?
I just loved it. Like when I got into stand-up, I loved it so much, and it was so much fun. Despite how incredibly brutal it is, I was still enjoying myself.
Yeah.
So yeah, and it was like I didn't really have any direction at the time in my life. I was just kind of like, I just gotten out of university, didn't really know what I wanted to do with my undergrad, which was in English, so pretty useless to begin with. And I had a hard time with social anxiety, and I also wanted to act, but like I didn't know how to go about acting.
Right, yeah.
So I'm like, this is like the cheapest thing I can enter. It's like the soccer of the arts world. You don't need anything. Just show up and kick the ball, you know?
Nice.
That's true.
Yeah, so.
You only need a ball in soccer. You only need a mic, or sometimes you don't even need a mic. You just need.
You don't even need a mic. You just show up, and there's people there. And you just start talking to them. That's it.
Yeah. Oh man. Do you remember? I know, like for me, I took your guys' class, which I highly recommend to anybody who wants to even just dabble in it, get an understanding of it. Because I took a lot out of it, and I think it is a lot of like. However much effort you put in, the more like you
absolutely. And you put in a fantastic effort, like it really showed in the grad show.
Oh, thank you. I think I just realized I was fishing a little bit for that. I don't know. As I was describing it, I don't know why I felt like, oh, maybe I'm trying to. Anyways,
I wouldn't give it to you if I didn't believe it. So you can fish all you want. I'm not going to give it to you for nothing.
I don't know why I had a sudden self-awareness of what I was doing. But anyways,
I appreciate that. I think probably another reason why I gave you that compliment, because if you were the kind of person who wasn't aware of their like fishing, I'd be like, go to hell, Josh.
Yeah,
keep fishing, buddy.
Like fishers should go to hell. But yeah, so the thing I wanted to get on point was because I learned a lot from getting a base foundation of like the structure, but then also like kind of a bit of the mindset and being able to practice it. You know, what was your way of like learning the craft to a point where like now you're teaching it, you have a deeper understanding? Like, how did you start getting to that point where you start learning the craft of writing jokes?
So for me, I would say it started a long time ago, way before I did stand-up. I just had no idea that it was happening. I just thought I was like, you know, repeating jokes to my friends. It started with The Simpsons. That's like the earliest I can remember. I would watch episodes, and then when my dad would come home from work, I would sit him down and just recite the entire episode, like front to back, including all the jokes. Yeah. And in doing so, like I've read this really cool book called Talent is Overrated. And in the book, they talk about how talent's not really a thing. It's usually hard work that gets people to these like places, but you don't see the hard work. So you're like, oh, they were just born with it. But you don't see like the, 10,000 hours or whatever it is they're putting in. So the best way, this book suggests that the best way to learn something is to take something that someone's already, like whatever you want to learn. Obviously this is like a little easier done with the arts than like sports per se, but just take something that someone else has done and you love and just recreate it on your own. And in doing so, you'll learn the structure that they used to create that. Because like art always has a structure. Even like crazy paintings that don't look like anything. That person learned structure first, and then they were able to like play with the canvas and the paint and whatnot. So yeah, for me, it was like the Simpsons. I was repeating the jokes back to my dad, and in doing so, I was learning joke structure over and over again, and just reinforced that in my mind, which later led to me being like the funny friend in my group, which eventually led to like my friends being like, "Hey, you should try stand up," and then eventually getting to stand up. But I remember there was a point where I was watching, I can't remember who it was, but they did a joke, and for some reason in my head, the word misdirect came up. And I was like, yes. I was like 2 or 3 years in. I'm like, more of that all the time. Misdirection. Which is what comedy is, right? It's all about tricking people into looking over here, and then really it's over here.
Yeah.
Like word magic.
Yeah. And like, I totally agree with that. I would say a lot of, even for me, I think it was a lot of watching Friends, and like, you know how once you watch enough of kind of sitcom television, you realize there's always a rhythm to the writing. It's like you can kind of see where it's going. And for me, my voice, I didn't realize this until a little later. Like I kind of developed more of Chandler's mannerisms. So like I thought he was the funniest. He always had the cleverest jokes. So I was like developing his sarcasm subconsciously. And it was like, that was one of the things when it came to start doing comedies. Like I knew I was funny, but I was so worried about not be able to translate that into a structure. And then it sometimes does take, you know, getting that kind of experience and teaching of like taking what you think you know, like subconsciously, and then just putting it in like a lesson that is like, oh, that's what I meant. That's what I thought that was.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it was like, even for you guys, when it comes to teaching it, like when you guys first started teaching it to when like your latest iteration that's going to be on Zoom, like how have you learned the craft of writing from that was different from when you started teaching it to like say now, if you've learned anything?
I would say my writing is for sure tighter, because every time I'm teaching this, you know, this concept of the setup and misdirect, and the setup creating an expectation, misdirect twisting or subverting that expectation, it's reinforcing it in my mind as well. And not just the lessons, but the feedback as well, right? While we're sitting there in the class and everyone's getting feedback on their jokes, as I offer possible, you know, places to subvert expectations, I'm in turn still flexing that muscle for myself. So now I find my writing has definitely gotten a lot tighter, to the point where I can write most of my jokes as like a bunch of one-liners just like stacked on top of each other. So like basically every other line is a laugh point.
Yeah.
Awesome. In terms of the brutality that you said of stand-up comedy was, can you know, acting has its own kind of brutality in the terms of like bombing auditions and also being on set and like forgetting lines and everything like that. Would you say comedy or acting has the more brutal aspects, or which one?
Oh, like of the two, I would say for sure comedy. Acting for sure can be rough. Like I've had some rough auditions and whatnot, but there's something like special, especially because acting often is not your thoughts and ideas. Like you're going in there, you're reading someone else's lines.
True.
Whereas in stand-up, you go in and it's you. It's like your soul you're bearing. And then there's, you know, 3 people in the room. They're all on their phones, or they're talking loudly to their friends in the back. And it's just like absolutely brutal. Whereas, in at least in the auditions, they'll at least be polite. They'll be like, thank you, thanks for coming. Bye. You stand up, you don't even get that. You're getting nothing, and you'll like it. That's.
So in the early days of you like going into those shows where you like bared your soul in front of 3 people and they're all not even paying attention to you, how did you work through that, and what were your kind of, I guess, mind tricks to make you pursue that craft still?
Yeah, so I learned very quickly, because my first show was a book show with like a big audience, because I had a friend who had started stand-up at the time, and he hooked me up with like the producer of the show, and I was able to get on this like actually relatively prestigious show that doesn't exist anymore, but at the time was like a Canadian comedy staple, like had been around for a long time.
Ooh.
So I thought that's what stand-up was gonna be. I'm like, wow, audiences all the time. And then like I think it was like my second or third show was like an open mic, and I'm like, oh, this is the reality that I'm facing now. And I think I just learned very quickly that this isn't like open mics and like that which is where the brutality is at its highest. I learned very quickly to accept that as like not my destination, but just like a step in the right direction. And I tried to, I guess, subconsciously, and I think as my open mic career like kind of shortened and I was able to like progress, I consciously realized that this isn't a place for me to necessarily get better at comedy. It's a place, not necessarily, I guess it is in one way, in that you're like learning to perform, and that is comedy as well. But I mean, gauging whether or not how funny my writing is, this is not the place for that. What open mics are for, if it happens, great. If not, for me, the main purpose of an open mic is to get comfortable with being on stage and get comfortable with your jokes just bombing. As hard as that is, just let them, because our instinct as comedians, we're often incredibly insecure people. I'm sure actors are also insecure individuals. Like, we want that attention. Look at me. And then when we don't get it, we're like, no, please, I need it. But our instinct is to like have a save, and I'm guilty of this as well. But like, you do a joke, the joke doesn't land, and then you're like, you guys didn't like that one, and then everyone's like, haha, we didn't. You're right. And like that gets like a bit of a reaction, so you're like, good, I'll use that. But I often try to tell students that if you can get to a point in your stand-up comedy where you do a joke at an open mic or whatever, and it doesn't land, and you give it a second to like breathe, and nobody still laughs, and you can move on to the next joke without addressing it, and also feeling like the pang of failure, which is a very real thing. Maybe it shows on your face, maybe it doesn't, depending on like how good your poker face is. But if you still feel that pang, I think we still belong there. You need to like keep working. If you can do a joke, have it not land, and not feeling that pang of failure, and you can just move on to the next joke and not have to be like, that one stuck or whatever, then you're ready to move on.
So you really got to just numb yourself out from all you got to break yourself down to the point where it's like, it's okay, they didn't laugh.
No, not even. It shouldn't be. It should just be they didn't laugh. Not that it's okay. That's just like what it is. It doesn't have to be okay. It doesn't have to be bad. It's just a thing. True. They didn't laugh. Doesn't mean anything.
Just from me, from like Josh and I doing a bunch of these episodes and talking with different guests and everything, what I've come to understand is that whether it be in acting, whether it be graphic design or being comedy, the artist truly has to kill the ego. And that's the whole thing. Like when you talk about bombing, or at least like having a joke not pan out and being okay with that, I think the first instinct would be to take it so personal, because why don't you like me? But what I'm just hearing from you is, doesn't work, man. It doesn't work. You move on with it. And it's that kind of mental fortitude that I swear that you've reached a point where I think I'm still striving for right now.
Thank you. Yeah, and I really I'm not quite there in like other aspects of my art game, but for sure in my stand-up game I'm there. But like same with acting, I haven't been doing that for very long, and that can be pretty brutal at times. And I don't necessarily have I can go to an audition and eat shit and then and leave. I can't leave yet being like, yeah, whatever, I'll get the next one. I'm usually like, damn it, I ate it. Fuck.
Yeah, I think a lot of it just ends up being like being able to set your own expectations going into the craft of stand-up or acting. And like, it's funny you mentioned like your first show is like, oh, I got a book show, there's a whole audience, that's great. It's like, oh, now this is my expectation, and then suddenly everything gets brutally realized that it's like, oh, that was not the right expectation. When you first like started going, did you have like, even before you did the book show and whatnot, and like you weren't so experienced, like do you remember what your expectation of kind of that idea of making it was? It's like, oh, I'm gonna do this exciting thing I'm passionate about. It's like, how far can I go?
Yeah, so I definitely had like skewed expectations, and I find better than tempering your expectations, best thing to do is just have no expectations. But that's very difficult to do. That is very, difficult, but very, very difficult to do. But if you can, recommend. With no expectations, you're always going to come out happy. Always.
Exactly. Yeah, that's so true. Yeah. You always win.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't matter. So long as like nothing terrible happened, you're like, that's great. So as far as expectations go, I definitely thought, I was like, okay, people are going to see me. I'm going to get on TV shows.
Yeah.
All that. Not that doesn't happen, especially not in Canada. It's not a thing in Canada. and then once I started stand up and I like kind of been in the scene and stuff, I was like, okay, you know what? Once I get to Just for Laughs, I'll make it to Just for Laughs. Someone will see me there. That'll be it. Made it to Just for Laughs. Nothing happened. I have a line in my bio now, but no one's calling me up like, hey, we saw you at the festival. Okay, that's nothing. So it's great for me that I have it, but it's nothing for me. So they can go to hell too. So now I just you know, all I care about is not having to have a day job. So far, so good.
Yay. Nice. Oh man. Even I guess when you did Just for Laughs, like, did that also feel like this is a watershed moment when you're in it, right?
Yeah, no, I thought for sure. I'm like, someone's going to see me here. Or, you know, when I leave this festival, everyone in comedy said, they'd be like, oh, have you heard about it? No one cares. No one gives a shit.
Oh, man. Well, that's good to keep my expectations in check then on that as well.
But here, I'll tell you something that was a little like painful to experience. I don't know if either of you know who Taylor Tomlinson is, but she's got like a Netflix special and stuff.
Yeah.
Late night TV and stuff. So she was on the American version of the show I did at Just for Laughs the same year. I did Homegrown. She did New Faces.
Yes.
And then she got like a Netflix special. I crushed. I did like 7 jokes. I got 8 applause breaks. Probably the best that I've ever had in my life.
Wow.
No one gave me no goddamn special or nothing.
Right, because that's like,
God damn it.
That's the difference, right? Is like, because what is it? The Bong, right? The very prominent like Asian producer within the Toronto scene. Like he often likes to say it's like it's kind of flipped in terms of the industry in Canada versus the US. In the US, like if you can get on New Faces in Just for Laughs, that's like a huge stepping stone in the industry because that's a much tougher thing to do. But in Canada, I mean, Just for Laughs is kind of what all Canadian comedians have to just get on. It's just there's not so many avenues. Just for Laughs, you'll just always find yourself going through that lane. But like the opportunities aren't there. But it seems like for Canadian comics, like if I can just get on a late night show, that'll mean like I'll made it. But in the US, getting on late night shows is like, you know, it's a simple matter of booking. Yeah. So I always find that pretty interesting. It's just there's not that kind of structured filter way of like Canadian talent going from one step to like, oh, maybe networks are gonna, you know, get you on to do a show or whatnot.
And it's dumb because stand-up is so easy to produce on like a television level. It's so cheap to produce. It's so easy to produce. You don't need like a staff of writers. You need like 3 camera people, a theater, and just tell people you're going to be recording stuff. People show up. Like you don't even need to pay them to be there. They'll just come be a part of the studio audience, you know?
Yeah.
So stand-up is so incredibly easy to film and produce. It's just, again, our Canadian media has done so much because it's, I guess for them, it's so much cheaper risk-wise to just pay like $1 million and license something as opposed to invest like $100,000 into producing a few specials and then not having them come back. But like there's so many good comics, obviously at the superstar level, like the Ali Wongs and the Dave Chappelles. We don't have anyone like that here, but I would argue that like at the headliner level, and even at the middle kind of like feature comic level in Canada, I would say we're stronger than our American counterparts. I feel like American audiences like harder hitting comedy, but they're way more lenient with what comedy is.
Right.
Whereas like here we have more British sensibilities. And we tend to be harder on people, especially in Toronto. Like outside of Toronto, it gets a little easier because you can say like racist bullshit, racist, sexist bullshit, and that like flies. But in Toronto, you know, and most of the cities in Canada, Montreal, Edmonton's pretty good. Calgary's rough. You can say some crazy shit in Calgary, but Edmonton's very progressive. They'll be like, "Hey, what the fuck you say, buddy?" I like Vancouver. Obviously, Vancouver's good too.
Yeah. I found that. Yeah, I found that interesting. That was the interesting thing I learned taking class and hearing you and Joe talk about those differences. Especially for you, I know like your style is very like hitting the edge of what is like people is like, oh my goodness, can't believe you just said that. But like in terms of you developing your style, and I know you talk a lot about kind of your experience as like a Middle Eastern stand-up and like an actor as well. Like how have you, and I asked Joe a little bit about this from the East Asian perspective, but like for you, now that you've worked several years in the industry, like how have you felt in terms of Middle Eastern representation in like the Canadian comedy or acting scene?
Yeah, there isn't a lot of it. There is some for sure. In general, like Middle Eastern people kind of suffer the same fate as like most South Asians and East Asians, in that they become engineers and lawyers and things based on familial pressure. So I think that is like a huge kind of barrier to why there isn't more representation. But I've definitely had like people, mostly brown men, come up to me after the show and be like, "Oh man, it's so nice to see someone that looks like me on stage, and not like Stephen Smith or whatever." So yeah, I don't know. It's getting better for sure, and I'd like to think I'm like doing my part by being out there, and also not being a comic who kind of shies away from my experience as a racialized brown man in this industry and the acting industry. Ooh, that's even worse. Yeah. But no, you know what? Stand-up's full of nothing but predators and degenerates. So.
Yeah, apparently, I feel like there needs to be one every year. Just you got to get one to keep the rep going. Apparently,
listen, this isn't stand-up isn't a thing for normal people. Like, there's always something like super traumatic that gets us into this.
Yeah.
And like acting for sure, I'm sure is on a kind of similar thing, but not to this level. I feel like you really have to be hurt for stand-up to be like, that's what I want to do.
Yeah. I feel like with acting, there's a lot more filters before like your bad behavior can be exhibited or anything like that. Because if anything, if you're actually up there, like your publicist will catch wind of something and he or she will tell you not to do it. Whereas like that's where comics would just go on Instagram Live and do something really dumb.
Yeah, for sure. And comics love to pretend that we're these like all-knowing truth sayers, because we would like to think that we're special.
Yeah.
So and with that mindset, comics have said some like insane things because they're like, "What? I'm just saying the truth." It's like, you're being super racist right now. You can tone it down.
Yeah. I just remember when Joe Rogan was making fun of Bill Burr for wearing a mask, and then Bill Burr actually called him out.
Ripped him. I knew it. That was amazing.
Yeah, that was hilarious, man.
Yeah. Joe Rogan's such an idiot. He's turned into like a real piece of crap.
I know. Dude,
do you know what it is? I don't think he turned into a piece of crap. I think he was always a piece of crap, and I'm just now seeing it for whatever reason, like blind spots, man. They're tough. Like you can't see them until you see them, and then you're like, oh shit, I can't not see it now. But
dude,
he was always a scumbag, I guess.
Right.
The alpha brain wore off then. So I noticed like during the quarantine, you made yourself like a short film and everything.
Yes.
It's great though. Like I love the ending when you said like the PM was Google Sheets. That's awesome. Good call on that. Did you find yourself having to create something while in quarantine? Like, does that innate feeling just drives no matter what scenario you're in?
Not necessarily. Like, there is for sure that part of me that wants me to be always creating, and like that's kind of why I got into stand-up too. Is I wanted to have something I could create, and I didn't know what to do. I'm like, I can write on a page and say it to strangers. That doesn't cost anything to do.
Yeah.
The reason why I made that short film is I do in general want to get better at making my own content, because Canadian media and the barriers to entry that they have, and like even once you get in, there's all these like weird hoops. Like I've heard of so many projects that got like development deals with like CBC and other Canadian broadcasters, and they just got like buried in this development process, and like I never heard about it again. The person never talked about it again. I'm like, what happened? They got paid like, I don't know, maybe a few $1,000s, and then it just like they basically just like pushed it aside until you forget about it. And I'm like, that's terrible. Like, produce something. What are you doing?
Yeah.
So with that, I do want to get better at creating my own content, and I do want to get better at like filming and directing and editing. So there was a short film festival, an isolation like short film festival, and they're like, "Oh, make a movie." So I'm like, "Okay, I'll try to make a movie and try to like." I want to challenge myself because I've been, doing stand up and whatnot. So I've been writing everything, and everything I have has dialogue. So I want to be like, okay, let's see if I can do something without dialogue and still tell a story, still move it across, like and really push that like the visual part of the medium and see what I can do visually as far as storytelling goes.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was more for me to practice. It wasn't like, art, man, I got to get it out there and stuff. But without externalizing it, I'm sure there's for sure a part of me that's like, come on, man, you got to be creating and do it. But I try not to like embrace that side of me too much without, getting super douchey. I think.
I like how you always catch yourself with that. It's like, come on, man, we're just putting out shit. Like, if it catches, it catches. If it not doesn't, it doesn't.
Listen, like that short film was so stupid. It was about me running out of toilet paper.
Yeah.
And then I get a machete to leave the house. Like it's ridiculous.
Oh man, how have you been? How have you been doing in terms of, because like you're a working comic, right? So like not only are you more or less doing it every day, but like you're going out to do shows and trying to get those dates and stuff. How have you been handling kind of the sudden shift in the whole process?
Oh man, not good. Not good, yeah. Let me tell you. Getting better now for sure. But yeah, at first it's like, what do I do with my life? Like, who am I even? So much of my identity was performing stand-up. So once I was taken away, I was like, who am I? Why do I exist? What's anything? But now it's getting a lot better. I was holding off on doing Zoom shows because I saw one when quarantine first went down, and I was like, this looks nightmarish. I don't want to do any of this. But also now I've kind of come to terms with the fact that this is the world we live in now, and this is going to be a part of it. What stand-up is. So I'm doing my first Zoom show next week, nice. And I've done one show live, but it was socially distanced and outdoors, and that was like 2 weeks ago. And I've done one other show where it was like pre-recorded and broadcast over like a week-long online conference that was happening.
Cool.
Oh, interesting. How was the social distancing show? Was it in like a park?
Yeah, it wasn't in a park. It was at a naturist retreat. So everyone's naked, including myself and the other comics. So we're all but it was like it's kind of like this park / campground where people are there year round. Yeah. And like it's not like a clothing optional place. Like nudity is like the standard, and then should it get like colder, you can put clothes on. They're not like crazy about it. They're not gonna be like, no, I don't care if it's minus 35, naked.
Right. So not radical nudists.
Yeah, exactly. But it was cool. Like so they have like this kind of welcome center when you come in, and that welcome center has like a bar and a patio. The show happened with us on the patio, and then there's like a front lawn, and everyone was on that front lawn, but like everyone was socially distanced. Everyone had their and we had like wipes and hand sanitizer. So when we were like passing the mic off and stuff, we were like wiping it down.
Wow.
Yeah.
Man, yeah.
The new world we live in, man. This is how we do it.
I know. Mic technique is going to be completely different now. It's like before I just have it right on my chin, and it's like, okay, cool. I
told you, man. I told you. I said that was an option, but I told you not to do it. I said it's gross.
That is true. Oh, I remember now that you mentioned that. I've done it so much that it is kind of now just a second nature thing. But I do remember doing it on a really shitty mic in like Einstein Pub, and then realizing halfway through my lip was touching parts of it that I didn't initially expect it to, but then I just kept going because it was just going through the set, and then afterwards I was like, oh no, am I gonna expect something there tomorrow? Or is like, yeah, okay, so that is another thing. I gotta change that mic technique.
Absolutely, yeah. And practice with like something you can hold very close to your chin, but just don't touch it. But have it like right touch there. It.
Yeah, frick.
I meant to ask you, like, how are Zoom shows? Do you just pin your own video, or do you go gallery view and see the whole crowd as you're going?
Honestly, I haven't done one yet, so I don't know. Okay, but so I saw two. There was one Zoom show where, it was the person hosting would pin whoever was doing their set, and
Mm.
then the audience, they would keep their mics on so you can hear the laughter. Yeah, and then the other one I saw was over Twitch. So someone had like control over it, and they were able to pass it off somehow through a link, I'm assuming. So it would just cut to that person. And because that was Twitch, you only see the streamer, you don't see. But Twitch was way worse because there's nobody can interact the same way like in Zoom, where people can have their mics on and laugh. On Twitch, that's not an option. It's just the person streaming. So everyone was just typing LOL in the chat, and I was like, I want to die. I'm not even on the show, and I want to die.
Oh man, that's how you're supposed to gauge whether a joke was good or not. It's like that was another thing I learned from you guys. Is like you really do need an audience to have the permission. Like if you don't see other people laughing, sometimes you'll be in your head and like you won't laugh. I know exactly watching Zoom stuff, like just from me watching comedies at home, like I don't laugh uproariously when a joke is on a TV. As I usually just go, it's like, huh, that's funny. And then that's it. You can only do that when you're like by yourself
surrounded
looking at it.
People,
yeah. And it's Zoom shows do look pretty insane. So I guess for me, I've been trying to hold off as much, but like definitely for professionals, you still got to do something in that area.
Yeah, and it's and honestly, the only reason I'm doing this show is because it's paid. But
Right, you got to do it.
But it is going to be good practice for me as well. Like I am going to benefit from this. It's not going to be the exact same as stand up, but it is good practice because I haven't been doing my jokes, and I was pretty good with remembering them once because I didn't really practice before I did either the social distance show or the recorded one.
Yeah.
But there were like tags I missed. For the most part, I had the joke down pat. I knew how to, but I also struggled a little more with like picking my jokes. And I'm like, shit, what jokes do I have left? I don't even know what I've done so far. So that was like a little more challenging. Whereas like, before quarantine, that wasn't an issue. I could just go from joke to joke to joke, and I didn't have to like pause in between to think about it. Whereas now that's kind of suffered, and like little tags here and there, I forget.
Right. Yeah. That's another thing I guess I learned from doing more shows and talking to more comics about that. It's like initially I thought when you go to do a 5 or 10-minute set, or even like eventually you get the headlining, it's like, oh, you have everything in order, prepared and ready to go, and you just stick to it. And then I've been learning a bit more though, like once you've been in it for a few years, like you have enough jokes, you have enough experience in front of audiences that like, if an audience reacts to something in a specific way, you can more naturally like just pivot. It's like, oh, then this other jokes I prepared is probably not going to work. I'll go into something that I think will work. That was something I never really thought of. It's like, how do you then like compile your sets for like shows? Or if you're doing like long shows, do you go on the fly and be like, I got to switch some jokes up?
Yeah. So I something we talked about in the class is not like, especially in longer sets, not burning through one subject for an extended period of time, because it becomes kind of like cumbersome. You're like, okay, another joke about weed. Oh my God, what else? Is there nothing else to your personality, sort of thing? Yeah. So, and I have like jokes that can be grouped up. I try to do like with shorter sets. I often am doing 1 or 2 new jokes. So I will try to do like the newest strong joke that I can open with, and close with like, again, the newest closer, like joke that will land as consistently as possible and as hard as possible. Right. And then in the middle, I will throw in like whatever I'm working on at the time. But for longer sets, it's definitely kind of like a more fluid thing, because if what I used to do when I was maybe like under 5 years in, I would have a very defined set list in my head, and I would repeat like the titles of all the jokes, so I knew exactly the order to hit them. Yeah. In a longer set, that's like really difficult to do, to have basically like, let's say 25 titles in your head of like these jokes that come out to, 40, 45 minutes. It's way more brain power than I need to like, commit to it. So I just try to have like a bit of a Rolodex in my head, and I'm lucky in that I have like a very good memory with things like this. I'm able to recall a lot of information. So that's never been like a problem for me, which is nice. But yeah, I do find now I'm more like with the flow and whatever I feel like in that moment, and I'm able to adjust a little more easily. But I do have like a very loose kind of guideline as to what I want to do while I'm up there. I try to hit at least like a few new jokes.
Right. Yeah. And that just takes time. It's like that should be the expectation. Like you shouldn't have that expectation within the first few years of being able to do that. It's like it takes time and fuel and effort and experience. And
again, it's that like you know, once you have the structure, then you can start to play with it. But I that structure of having that defined set list in my head of me going through, okay, the titles of every joke front to back, so I know, like, over and over again, so I know exactly which joke to hit. Probably has allowed me now to like really develop that Rolodex of jokes in my head, because I've, you know, repeated the titles in my head so often that I'm like, okay, I know I got to hit this joke, this joke, this joke. So now I can be like, which joke do I need? And I just go through the titles in my head.
Right.
In terms of disruptions to the planned list that you have in your head and everything, have you had any like hecklers that you have to deal with?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. It's par for the course with stand-up. Most often with me, hecklers are very supportive and they don't realize they're being hecklers. They think they're helping.
Please.
And I find, I think this is just way more common with hecklers. A lot of times people, because of like movies, they think hecklers are going to come out there and be like, hey, I'm going to beat you up, or your joke sucks, or whatever it is. Usually they'll like shout stuff out because they're trying to add to the joke, and or they want to like really encourage you, or they'll be like, that's so true, that's so funny, oh my god, this guy's hilarious, and things like that. Which is a little more challenging to deal with, because you can't come down on them. If they come at you like a jerk and like, you suck, you'd be like, fuck you, buddy. Like, everyone's like, yeah, tell him, and something I told Josh, I told this to too many students, I think, because it's for sure not everyone's style, but like my style of comedy can be pretty abrasive. So when people pipe up and I don't want them talking, I just tell them to shut the fuck up. I'm like, hey, shut the fuck up. And usually they get the point. But again, if someone's like very nice, they're like, you're so funny, and I'm like, shut the fuck up. Like, wow, this guy's a jerk. This guy needs to like fucking get out of shit.
That's true.
So it's way more challenging to deal with. You have to politely explain to them, like, hey, you're disrupting the show, or you're interrupting my timing, because I was about to say a punchline, you said something, and now I have to address it, and that joke is screwed. I can't go back and repeat it. I can't be like, all right, where were we? Oh yeah, the setup. So I was walking down the street. It's like, all right, yeah, we don't care anymore. We've lost the
Yeah. Unfortunately, there's no cut. Let's roll the tape and restart the cameras on
back to ones, everyone. Let's go.
Oh, man.
That's the most Canadian heckling I've ever heard in my life, man. That's so nice.
Yeah. And I'll tell your audience a little secret. People think heckling is the worst thing you do to a stand-up comedian. It is not. Silence is deafening. You want to hurt a stand-up comedian? Don't say anything. That will kill them.
Yeah, I'm sure, man. I'm just imagining like someone typing LOL to substitute for a laugh. Like that would even be killing me, man. Like I don't give a shit about your text, man. I want to hear something.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh my god, man. Oh, dude. Also, I'm just on your Instagram too. You've gone incredibly ripped in quarantine and everything. Has quarantine made you more active?
So I was like relatively active, basically around the same time I started stand-up. So I started kind of working out because I got into stand-up, and I've always been like a weird, like against the grain kind of person. I don't know why. That's just my thing. I'm just like, everyone's like, I'm walking to the left. I'm like, I'm going to the right. Even though there's a cliff there, I'm like, I'm going off that cliff. I don't give a shit. So when I started stand-up, I'm like, okay, I really want to differentiate myself. I knew that was always going to be an important thing. And like eventually I wanted to act and be in movies and stuff. So I'm like, I'm just going to get a head start on this like action body, whatever. I don't think I'm almost 40. I'm never going to be an action star. But I figure if I make it in Hollywood, I'll have to be like lean. And I've always wanted to be fit myself, just for myself. And I started working out in like 2015, 2016 or 17, I think it was. I got like super lean for some like weird contest, like unhealthy kind of lean. But I was able to stay relatively like lean for some time, and then I had like after Just for Laughs, actually, I had like this pretty brutal like depressive episode that like was overarching. It lasted for a very long time. Lasted basically till like, so I'm still kind of in it, but like I'm kind of emerging.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so it's still a work in process. But yeah, just for laughs again because of my expectations. This is why you shouldn't have expectations.
Yeah.
I like coming back from Just for Laughs hurt me really badly, and like I didn't even realize how much it was until like maybe actually earlier this year that I'm like, whoa, I haven't like dealt with any of these feelings. I mean that's why I'm so sad all the time. So crap, where were we going with this? I'm sorry, I lost my attention.
Oh no problem.
No worries.
And if you don't mind me asking, like you did delve into a bit about your mental health and everything like that.
Yes.
Can you go into ways that creatives can and should take care of themselves in terms of their mental health?
Oh, 100%. Meditation is a good one.
Okay.
I don't do a lot of that. I do a fair bit of stretching. So that's kind of like meditation.
Yeah.
One that I don't recommend that a lot of creatives do is drugs. But hey man, that's, we can't all be monks and meditate all the time.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely. And also just like feeling your feelings. That's for sure been the hardest one for me because I grew up in a family where emotions were like bad.
Yeah.
That, you know how it is.
Oh, we know.
We know.
There's always that element there where it's like emotions in the future, save that for the future.
Yeah,
are we going to address in the future? No, save for the future again. No, just never.
Save that for the future. Save your expectations of that for the future. So yeah, I think just like really feeling your feelings and allowing yourself to be sad or whatever it is you're feeling, I think is also incredibly important. And something that I heard recently that I thought was like incredibly made a lot of sense and very profound is that healing never feels good. Like it's always like a painful process to get to the other side of it. Like I've never broken a bone, but I imagine it hurts while it's like healing, especially in the beginning when like the bone is kind of like fusing back together. It's not like a nice feeling. You're like, wow, my legs never felt better. You're like, this hurts a lot. So healing takes a lot of pain. Oh, and to go back to getting ripped. Sorry, that's what I forgot. Getting ripped over quarantine. I'd let my diet slip for a bit, and I figure I'm like, okay, you know what? I wanna get super lean again. It's been quite some time. In like 2016, I was like kind of like sickening. Like I said, I was like sickening kind of lean. I had this one picture of me from the summer of 2016, and I was like so shredded. And I showed it to a few people. I'm like, look how cool this is. And like, every time the reaction was like, that's disgusting. Don't show me this picture.
That's so mean, man.
But I get it. Like I'm super, super lean. Like I still have muscle on me. I don't look emaciated or anything, but like you can see like every single striation. And I'm like, I don't even know how I got that low. That's weird.
That's odd. Yeah.
But once quarantine hit, I'm like, okay, you know what? I can't go to the gym. I can't add any mass to what I have. So I'm just going to try to lean the heck out. And it's been working. I'm able to like see most of my abs again. I had this joke about how I am like sad and I cope with my sadness and depression by going to the gym and working out. And then I lift my shirt up and I show my abs and I say, look how sad I am. There's a whole punchline to it. But that joke.
Yeah, that takes a long time to get to that joke, man. That's a lot of effort.
For sure. But that also for maybe like the last year, that joke stopped hitting as hard because I let my diet slip. So I was like soft. So when I lift my shirt up and I'm like, look how sad I am. They're like, we don't see anything. I'm like, oh no, now I'm actually sad.
Oh man. That's if anything, that's like the purest form of really gauging where you are at physically. If that joke lands, it's like, all right, I'm doing that.
I'm still doing it. Yeah.
I'm still doing it. If that joke doesn't, oh shit, I got to make some changes.
Yeah, exactly.
That's funny.
Yeah, I know that joke is always going to keep me in check with my fitness.
Yeah.
Like, am I being honest with my fitness? I don't know. I'll find out. Let's do this joke.
Nothing like an audience not looking at you as silent and being like, oh, right. And then having that as the motivation.
Totally. I remember like, going from doing that joke and getting like catcalled by the women in the audience to just like silence. I was like, ooh, something slipped. Something's different.
Oh man, that's hurt even more. But I think we're getting close to we're getting close to the end of the podcast. Usually kind of towards the end, once we've gone through the discussion and like talked a bit more, gotten a little bit more insight. I know kind of we've established that it's best not to have an expectation, just to like kind of keep your head focused, work hard on the craft. I'm wondering now, like moving forward, that you are like a working, like, do you have maybe not necessarily expectations, but like goals or like specific aspirations that you want to hit, you like within in the future?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think especially in Canada, it's impossible to be, unless you're in certain streams. I think it's impossible to be like a single faceted artist. I think you have to be doing everything.
Right.
So, you know, and that goes for most of the performing arts in Canada, especially acting and comedy and whatnot. You can't just be an actor. You can't just be a comic. You know, you have to also write. You also have to direct. You have to do everything. And I have I've been doing this program through BIPOC TV and Film. Shout out to BIPOC TV and Film. I highly recommend you both get involved with them. They're a really fantastic group run by the amazing Natalie Younglai and Jay Vadia, who are absolute gems. And they're both writers who work in Canadian TV. And they started this organization to just get more BIPOC, you know, individuals into Canadian TV writing rooms, because Canadian TV writing rooms, Canadian TV in general is incredibly white, but like the writing rooms and behind the scenes is like crazy white. Like Kim's Convenience is written by a bunch of white people, which is like, and like In's Choi is there, and he gets, you know, final say and stuff, but it kind of like lessens the authenticity of the show.
Yeah.
It's like Stephen Williams writing for Mr. Kim. Oh, Mr. Kim. Okay, so,
yeah. Right. That was a surprise.
So I think through this program, BIPOC TV and Film, they did this group. They did this program called the Kids TV Writing Boot Camp, and it was basically like this 3-month program where you go through and they teach you how to write like a pilot episode for a kids TV show. So that, because kids TV out of everything is like the whitest middle-aged cis white guy industry in the world. It's just a bunch of like middle-aged white dudes who have kids, got into the industry, and now they're all like 60 to 80 years old writing kids TV shows, and that's all these writers' rooms are. So they're like, we want to get more BIPOC individuals into this into these rooms. And yeah, so I finished that program I think not yesterday, last week was like the official final day of the program. Nice. And yeah, we all like have final drafts of these like kids TV show episodes that we've been working on.
Nice.
And it's been really helpful to like learn structure and stuff. So hopefully, fingers crossed, by the end of the year, I'll be back in like another writing room of some kind. And I could just kind of keep that as my new thing, because that pays. Like I'll never stop doing stand-up, but stand-up, there's like very little money in it. You have to be incredibly crafty in Canada. Even in the US, it's not like if you are making a full-time living as a comic and you're not like, you know, doing specials and selling out theaters and whatnot, it's an incredible grind. You're touring like crazy. You're going from comedy club to comedy club to comedy club. Like it's not a fun life. So I would much rather just have like a paycheck that allows me to, and also if I'm in the writer's room, then I can like write myself into shit.
That's true. That's true.
Like, wild coincidence, the character's name is Foad. That's my name. Wow. It's also on the title of the script, but wow, that's crazy. Like, all right, so I got the role. All right, let's go.
Well, why go through the hassle of trying to hire?
How many Foads are there out there? There can't be that many, especially not in the arts.
Yeah, that's the hustle. That's the Cool. Yeah, no, I look forward to that. I remember like talking to you about it. It's like that was something I'd never thought of before, and like we had a chance to chat after a show over. I think it was last Thanksgiving in Ottawa as an Absolute Comedy. I just happened to be there for family, and you were there. It was a nice coincidence. And then you mentioned the kid, the lucrative children's TV show market, and it hasn't been tapped. So yeah, that's always something people could look into. Yeah,
absolutely. And like, so we've been doing, most of the class at first was basically story structure and how to like format scripts and whatnot, because a lot of these people are very, very new to it. Not that I'm like some sort of expert, but I knew how to like structure script and a story to some degree. So, but it's been incredibly helpful regardless. But we've had a lot of guest producers come in and talk to us, and it's been like so much of this industry is just making connections to people and like just maintaining connections and stuff. And then, you know, if they need someone, they'll contact you, like, hey, we need a writer. Are you available? Come on in, sort of thing. There's no like job postings. There's no like to be like, oh, submit, boom, done. Like it really is just word of mouth. But something someone said, one of these guest speakers that really resonated with me was she's like, she was talking about how she's had to deal with like racism. She's a racialized woman, and she's like, well, you know, these people like screaming slurs at me and whatnot. I can't do anything about it. I've tried talking to them. They can't listen. But I can put messages of like empathy and inclusion into their kids' heads because they're gonna watch my shows. And then those kids are going to grow up and call their parents out and make these videos that are like, no, actually, Black Lives Matter. You can't say all lives matter, and here's why that's racist.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, that's fantastic. Yeah, you know, I definitely want to be making content for adults. Like, my stand-up is definitely not for kids. But at the same time, like, it doesn't hurt to just have more skills and be versatile and be able to do a lot of things, you know? Why do you want to be a one-trick pony? Shit, if I can make some kids laugh, hell yeah. And then I'll make their parents laugh my dick jokes.
Just go all across the generations, all up and down the generation tree.
No one's safe. You're all gonna laugh, motherfuckers. I'm coming for you.
Sick. Looking forward to it. Okay, so usually as well, just to kind of as a palate cleanser at the end of our podcast, we do like a word association little game. So I'll say 10 words. So like after the first word I say, first word that comes to your mind, clear your head. We'll see what happens. I'll go through my list, and then Lucas will go through his. So if you're up for
hold on, we're each doing a list of 10, or we're doing one at a time?
I'll do 10 words, and then he'll do 10 words, and then
I'll do 10 words,
and then Oh no, you just rapid fire off of our list of words. Yeah. So like first word I say is family, and then immediate word that family dog. Nice. Okay. Next word. Pineapple.
Juice.
Rain.
Fall. I just completed these. All right, let's see what.
Okay. Alone.
Me.
Motivation.
Flimsy.
Kumquat.
Ooh, untasted.
Mountain.
Overrated.
Overrated. Tightrope.
Challenging.
Satisfied.
Delicious.
And ending.
Ooh, death.
Poignant right on the thing. Lucas.
Two on the nose.
All right. Clear your head, man. Get loose. First word that pops out, okay?
Let's go.
All right. Hands.
Wrinkles.
Fit.
Tight.
Isolation.
Ooh. Terrible.
Feet.
Sweaty. Because that's what they are right now. It's hot.
It's hot.
Connection.
Sorry?
Connection.
Making out.
Oh, nice. Shoulders.
Ooh, round.
Memory.
Ooh. Painful.
Cats.
Funny.
Raptors.
Smaller than believed to be. I know that was too many words.
That's good though.
Yeah.
And the last one, Foad.
Hart in Arabic. That's what it means.
That's a nice little bookend to everything. All right,
right?
Great.
Isn't that cute?
Perfect. That's perfect. Great. And on the podcast, thank you so much, Fawad, Hart, HP, for being on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. Lucas and Josh had a great time.
Awesome. Great. Is there anything you want to promote, or usually like what are your social media handles and stuff like that?
I'm on everything at Foad HP, including TikTok now, which is terrifying. Trying to impress the teenage kids.
Yeah.
They're not having any of it. But everything is FOAD Yeah, I'm on Twitter. I'm on Instagram. Don't follow me on Instagram unless you want to see slutty photos. All I do is post slutty, mostly nude photos. That's kind of my thing.
Got to give the people what they want.
If you want jokes, if you want jokes, come to Twitter. I make jokes there. I am very left-leaning and anti-oppression in my sensibilities. So if you like cops and stuff, don't come to my social media.
Solid.
But if you're like down with BLM and shit, we'll be all right.
For sure. All right, great.
Not that I think that's not your fan base. I assume most of your fan base is, but just like a content warning, I guess. So people are.
Hey, right. I mean, like right now, I would say our fan base is. I feel like we know our fan base on a personal level because they're all just friends.
Yeah.
So we'll figure out who's new,
who's really pro cop, and who's down with ACAB.
Josh, we should probably talk about business, but we should probably stop buying ad space on Breitbart.
Oh, yeah. You know what?
What? You guys are gonna post this on Stormfront?
Yeah, Infowars too.
Those click-through rates, I mean, have not been making.
Oh man, millions of comments, all of them slurs, but so many comments on this.
Yes.
At least it's not apathy. I mean, at least you're getting somewhere.
It's something we discussed that silence is the worst. You want to hurt someone? Give them silence. If you give them some reaction, is a reaction. We got there.
Yeah, trolls really just care about your feelings. That's what it is.
Absolutely.
Trolls are just showing you they care too much.
I just want you to have a good time.
Yeah.
That's true. Lucas, what are your handles?
You can find me on Instagram and on Facebook at Lucas John Ing. Ing is 2 letters, N and G. And Josh?
Perfect. You can find me across everything at Josh Yang Comedy. And also look out for my second podcast called Sleep with Josh, where I read things in my monotone voice to get you to sleep. I'm pretty happy about my latest episode where I count sheep for an hour. So that's an exciting one. Go check that out. But yes, that's everything. Also follow this podcast, please, at HWMIY podcast across everything. And
have we made
subscribe.
it yet?
Yeah, have we made it yet? And on YouTube. Great, perfect. So that's the end of the podcast. Thank you guys so much.
Awesome.
Amazing. Thank you both.
Perfect.
Had a good time.
See you guys next week.